Hello all, this is Tanner Feemster with Bellingham Youth Chess, giving a quick tutorial on the Lucena position. So, details of this position is we have a pawn that is wanting to promote. Pretty simple. White wants to draw this position because white is defensive. He is, of course, down the pawn. However, if played correctly, in this current position with black to move, well, it doesn't really matter which side to move it is, it's still a win for black. It is technically still a win for black. Our goal to get this win is to get this pawn to promote on the E1 square. So, let's get started. First thing we should do here is actually bring our rook over and just give some extra distance away from, get the white king some extra distance away from our pawn. Because what I tell my students is what's better than having your king or having the enemy king away from your pawn is having the enemy king even farther away from your pawn. And you'll notice that white cannot move to any of these squares because our king here is defending them. And once white is kicked off of these squares, he'll only have the b3, b2, and b1 squares to go to. So we'll just throw this move in. Rook c8 check. For simplicity's sakes, let's bring the king over to b2. Okay. Now, you'll probably notice that our king is actually blocking our pawn. So what we're going to need to do in order to get this pawn to eventually promote is we're going to need to get our king out of the way. So let's, we got two options here, d2 or f2. I'll just bring him to d2 just because he also gets to maintain this opposition from the king. So it kind of acts as an extra little barrier to keep this guy from coming in to snatch up that pawn. But no matter which way we go, white can still come over and check us. And now it's like, ah, no, what are we gonna do? Some people might come back to e2, and then we're kind of in the same little dilemma here. Our king is still blocking our pawn, and our pawn cannot, in turn, promote. If white keeps his rook here for whatever reason, just does something like that, then we can move our king down because this pawn's not being attacked, and then eventually push that. But let's say that black keeps it going and brings his rook back behind that passed pawn. So now we're going to repeat the position. We made the correct first move to d2. It was just our follow-up sucked. Here we go. Now king e1. And king e1 is important because that frees up the pawn to advance, and we don't need to be touching our pawn with our king here on d2. Protecting it because it is actually not being attacked by the rook anymore because the rook is now on the d file. So king here, white squares up again. Now we push the pawn to safety. Now our king is touching the pawn and it is defended. White doesn't have a lot of good moves here. Let's give him a neutral move. e6, nothing too eventful. Rook to e6. Now, sorry for that pop-up. Now what we need to do is we need to actually bring our rook down. And I'll show you the purpose of this because it'll make sense here in a minute. After we bring our rook down, let's say white makes another kind of neutral move, just maintains the rook on this file. But you'll notice that white can't really do too much with the king because it's blocked off by this awesome rook that we have. So let's just say he comes back here to e8. Just get some checking distance. So if we bring our king out to either of these squares, the rook can come here and check accordingly. All right, let's come out to d2, check, king e3, check. Now we're actually going to come back to d3. And he's going to check us again. Notice earlier we were on d2 when he checked on here. We actually did make some progress by just coming up that one square. But that allows us to do is come to e4, and now the game is lost. And if you don't know why the game is lost, the value of this rook being on the 5th rank here comes noticed with rook e8 check. We now block with our rook coming to e5, cutting off this file, and now white has no way to actually defend against this pawn here, promoting. So if we take and black takes and white comes in, pawn promotes. Hey, let's get a queen. Let's come back here. There is something to be aware of. All right, so we are in this position. We checked him away, back. There we go, that was the bad move, and then we came down. Oh, actually, earlier it was king down, square up, there. Awesome. Notice how if we did not check this king away, we would have had some problems. Let me actually come back. So let's say that instead of checking the king and forcing them back here, like we did in our winning variation we went over, we actually brought the rook to d8 and just cut him off from here. So the white king will still never be able to come over and touch the pawn, but he is closer because earlier he was here and now he's here. Let's make a neutral move for white. Now our king doesn't have the option of coming out. So let's say we just do the same thing we did earlier where we shimmy off, but actually away from the king this time. So check, king e1, right? That same kind of little triangle formula so that we can get this pawn to advance. The rook lines back up on us. Pawn push down. And now it's white's turn. Now we have to check white because we need white away from that position. If we try coming up, well, let's say we bring it down, rook down the 5th rank, right? Like we're getting ready. And let's try this variation. So we come out, right? Remember, check, check, over, check, up. This doesn't work anymore because with rook e5, after white captures and black captures, white can actually come in because his king was close enough, and now this pawn will fall and white won't be able to win the draw. So rook d5 is not appropriate for the time. We need to check the king away. So we're going to come here to c2. Notice also that white has this option to come to d3. Well, we already went over what happens if king comes over to b2. But let's try this king d3 move. So white has a double attack on the pawn. We need the rook to be touching this pawn, protecting it, in order to counteract that double attack. However, there is no feasible way for our rook to do this because our rook cannot come to c2 because the king is defending that square. We will lose our rook. And we cannot come to e8 because the opponent's rook is eyeing down that square. So this is actually still winning for black, even though it looks like we can't defend this pawn. and I'll show you how. King D1. We're using this king as a shield from checks. So for example, if the king was not here, white could play here and throw a check at us. Not feasible. However, white cannot actually take this pawn, and I'll show you why. Whoops. There we are. We took the pawn, and now white's super happy. He thinks he's maintained a draw, but he's actually lost. And the reason for that is rook d8 check. So now we're denying this file. And now white is sweating because our king is actually attacking this rook. So the white king needs to constantly be touching this rook in order to keep the defense of it. So moving the king to c3 is a bad option. So the only other square is actually here on e3, but as we will find out, rook e8 picks up the rook. Now we deliver with check, and we have a double attack on this rook here once this king moves out of the way, and we will be able to capture the rook, and we can still win the endgame there. But anyways, that is the Lucena position. It's kind of basic. Usually nothing comes out as perfect to that position, but that's pretty much the fundamental building blocks of how to actually win that position. Well, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.